"Get security. I want her out of this building." Grant Whitmore's voice cut across the engineering floor like a cold blade. 40 people stopped typing. At the far corner desk, beneath the pale glow of 3 monitors, Naomi Carter lifted her head from her folded arms. Her eyes were red. Her face was tired in a way that no cup of coffee could hide. For one breath, she did not seem to understand where she was. Then she saw the CEO standing over her. "Mr. Whitmore," she said softly, pushing herself upright, "please look at my screen first." Grant did not look. He looked at her wrinkled blouse. He looked at the empty coffee cups beside her keyboard. He looked at the small framed photo of a 7-year-old boy taped to the edge of her monitor. Then he looked around the room, making sure everyone could hear him. "I don't pay senior engineers to sleep on company time," Naomi swallowed. Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed calm. "Sir, I've been here since midnight. The Apex system had a failure risk. I deployed the emergency fix at 9/2. Grant gave a short laugh, not loud, but cold enough to silence the room. "A fix? Without permission? It was covered under emergency protocol," Naomi said. "If you check the deployment log, I said, 'Get security.'" The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Maya Brooks, a young engineer 3 desks away, stared at Naomi's screen. She had seen the alert window flashing earlier. She had seen Naomi's badge activity on the shared dashboard after midnight. But Maya was 25, 6 months into her job, and the CEO of Harrington Global Systems was standing 10 feet away with anger in his eyes. So she said nothing. No one did. Grant turned toward the room and spoke as if Naomi were no longer a person, only a warning. "This is what happens when standards slip. We are preparing for an IPO. We cannot have people treating this office like a shelter." Naomi flinched at that word, just barely. Shelter. If Grant had known the truth, he might have chosen another word, because only 9 hours earlier, Naomi had been sitting beside her son's hospital bed in Brooklyn, holding his small hand while a nurse adjusted the monitor near his chest. Eli Carter was 7 years old, thin for his age, with gentle brown eyes and a stuffed bear that had lost one button eye. He had been born with a heart condition doctors called manageable, which meant it could be treated, watched, billed, and worried over for years. Mommy, Eli had whispered that night, "Are you going back to work again?" Naomi had kissed his forehead and smiled the kind of smile mothers learn to wear when they are breaking quietly inside. "Only if the computers need me." Eli had closed his eyes. "Tell the computers I need you, too." Those words had followed her all the way through the rain, across the bridge, into Manhattan, and up to the 31st floor of Harrington Global Systems. Naomi Carter was 36 years old, a black single mother from Georgia, raised by a woman who cleaned hospital floors for 28 years and still called every paycheck a blessing. Naomi had earned a scholarship to MIT, built security systems for government contractors, and held 2 patents in real-time data processing. But at Harrington, most people only saw the quiet woman in simple clothes who sat near the back wall. They did not see the mother counting medical bills at midnight. They did not see the engineer who had warned leadership for 6 weeks. They did not see the woman who had just worked through the night to stop a $200 million failure. And Grant Whitmore, the man in the tailored gray suit, saw least of all. 2 security officers stepped onto the engineering floor. Naomi slowly stood. Her knees were weak from exhaustion. Her back ached from 10 hours in the same chair. After deploying the fix, she had stayed long enough to watch the first verification tests pass. Then her body had finally given out for a few minutes at her desk. On her screen, the deployment log still glowed in clean white letters. Critical race condition resolved. High-volume order failure prevented. Fix deployed successfully. N. Carter, 9:02 a.m. She reached for the photo of Eli first. Not her laptop, not her notebook, not the company badge still clipped to her cardigan. Her son's photo. Grant watched with impatient eyes. "Leave the equipment." Naomi nodded once. She placed the photo carefully into her worn leather bag. Then she looked at Maya, not with blame, but with something gentler and sadder. A look that said she understood fear because she had swallowed it many times herself. As security walked her toward the elevator, the engineering floor remained frozen. No one objected. No one said, "Wait." The elevator doors opened. Naomi stepped inside, holding her bag against her chest. Just before the doors closed, she turned back one last time. Her eyes went to the screen she had begged Grant to read. 28 minutes remained before the market opened. At 9:30 a.m., Harrington Global Systems would process the largest trading volume it had seen in 2 years. If Naomi was right, the company would survive because of what she had done. If she had been wrong, everyone would know. But Grant Whitmore had already made his decision. He had fired the woman who saved him, and he had not even bothered to ask why she was tired. The elevator ride down from the 31st floor felt longer than the whole night Naomi had just survived. She stood between two security officers with her worn leather bag pressed against her chest, as if the small photograph inside it were something fragile enough to break if the world breathed too hard. No one spoke. The mirrored elevator walls reflected 3 people, but Naomi only saw one, a tired woman with red eyes, a loose strand of natural curls against her cheek, and a blouse that still smelled faintly of cold coffee and hospital disinfectant. When the doors opened into the marble lobby, heads turned. That was the thing about a building like Harrington Global Systems. It was designed to make failure public: glass walls, polished stone, a front desk wide as a judge's bench. Every footstep echoed like a verdict. Naomi kept walking. A receptionist who had once smiled at her every morning suddenly looked down at her computer. A man in a blue suit paused with his phone in his hand, watching as if he had just seen a scene from someone else's trouble. Near the revolving doors, the older security guard from the night shift frowned. He had seen Naomi come in just before midnight. He had watched her walk through the lobby with wet shoulders, a laptop bag, and the hurried face of someone answering an alarm no one else could hear. Now he watched her leave with security at her sides. "Mom," he said quietly. One of the officers shook his head. Naomi looked at him only long enough to offer a small, tired smile. "It's all right, Mr. Lewis," but it was not all right. Outside, New York had already begun its busy morning. Taxis leaned on their horns. Office workers crossed the street with paper cups and impatient shoulders. The June air was warm, but Naomi felt cold. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, not knowing where to place her feet. Her phone buzzed. For one hopeful second, she thought it might be someone from upstairs calling to say there had been a mistake. It was the hospital billing office. Naomi let it ring. Then came a text from Mrs. Alvarez, the neighbor watching Eli. He woke up. "Asking for you, no fever. I made toast." Naomi closed her eyes. The words almost made her knees give way. She had been awake for more than 27 hours. First the hospital, then the alert, then the drive-through rain, then the code, then the tests, then the deployment. Then Grant Whitmore's voice cutting her down in front of 40 people who had watched her work for years and still did not know how to defend her. She opened the photo of Eli on her phone. There he was, sitting on their old sofa in Brooklyn, wrapped in the blue blanket her mother had mailed from Georgia. His smile was missing one front tooth. His stuffed bear sat beside him like a small, loyal soldier. Naomi touched the screen with her thumb. "I'm coming, baby," she whispered. Back on the 31st floor, the engineering room remained strangely quiet. Grant Whitmore had gone to his glass office, satisfied that he had made an example. The 2 security officers had returned to the elevator. The monitors kept glowing, the servers kept humming, the clocks kept moving toward 9:30, and Maya Brooks still had not taken her eyes off Naomi's desk. There was something wrong. It was not only the way Naomi had looked when she woke, drained but not confused. It was not only the coffee cups lined up beside the keyboard like mile markers from a long road, it was the screen. The screen was still open. Naomi's terminal session had not locked. A deployment window sat in the center monitor. White letters on a black background. Maya leaned back in her chair, heart beating hard. She glanced toward Grant's office. The blinds were half closed. He was on the phone, pacing, probably telling someone how leadership required uncomfortable decisions. Men like Grant did not need facts right away. They needed a story that made them look decisive. Maya looked back at the screen. She stood. No one stopped her. 3 desks away, Daniel Cho, a senior engineer with 12 years at Harrington, watched her move but said nothing. 2 rows behind him, Paul Mercer slowly took off his glasses. The room had the feeling of a church after someone had said the wrong prayer. Maya reached Naomi's desk. Up close, the evidence of the night was everywhere. A hospital visitor sticker was still stuck to the sleeve of Naomi's cardigan, wrinkled at the edges. A paper cup from a 24-hour diner sat near the mouse. On a yellow sticky note written in Naomi's neat hand were 3 words. "Eli medication refill." Maya swallowed. Then she read the deployment log. "Critical race condition resolved. High volume order failure prevented. Fix deployed successfully." N. Carter, 9:02 a.m. Her breath caught. She scrolled upward. There were timestamps from 11:58 p.m., 12:14 a.m., 1:31 a.m., 3:06 a.m., 5:44 a.m., 7:18 a.m., 8:45 a.m., line after line of diagnostics, code rebuilds, test results, simulated order batches, and deployment checks. Maya knew enough to understand what she was seeing. Naomi had not been sleeping through work. She had been working through the night. "Maya," Daniel just had said softly. "What is it?" Maya did not answer right away. Her mouth had gone dry. She opened the shared access dashboard. Naomi Carter, badge entry, 11:49 p.m. floor access, 31st floor, 11:52 p.m. terminal activity, continuous. Last deployment, 9:02 a.m. No other senior engineer had accessed the system during that window. No one from the executive team. No one from infrastructure management. Just Naomi, alone. Maya felt heat rise behind her eyes. She remembered Grant's words, treating this office like a shelter. She remembered Naomi's face when she reached for Eli's photo. She remembered saying nothing. A shame she had no name for settled into her chest. At 9:29 a.m., the first market-open signals began to queue through Harrington's Apex trading system. A soft alert chimed across the monitoring dashboard. Green indicators flashed alive one by one. Every engineer on the floor knew what that meant. The day had begun. At 9:30, the trading volume surged. 3 times normal, then 4. The system absorbed it without a stutter. Orders matched cleanly. Sell orders remained sell orders. Buy orders remained buy orders. Latency stayed flat, no cascading failure, no red warnings, no emergency call from Sterling Ridge Capital, no disaster. Harrington Global Systems was running perfectly, because Naomi Carter had made it so. Maya picked up her phone with shaking hands and called Ethan Royce, the CTO. He answered on the 4th ring, distracted. "Maya, can this wait?" She looked at Naomi's empty chair. "No," Maya said, her voice breaking. "You need to come down here right now." A pause. "What happened?" Maya looked at the glowing deployment log, then at the elevator doors where Naomi had disappeared. "We made a terrible mistake." Ethan Royce reached the engineering floor at 9:38 a.m., still holding the coffee he had not had time to drink. He was 52, tall, silver-haired, and usually calm in the way men become calm when they have spent half their lives solving problems that frightened other people. But that morning, something in Maya Brooks's voice had taken the color out of his thoughts. "You need to come down here right now." He stepped off the elevator and felt the silence before anyone spoke. 40 engineers sat at their desks, but no one was really working. Their eyes moved between Naomi Carter's empty chair, the monitoring wall, and Grant Whitmore's glass office at the far end of the floor. The Apex system was running. The market was open. Green indicators moved in clean rows across the dashboard. Everything looked perfect. That was what made Ethan afraid. Maya stood beside Naomi's desk, her arms folded tightly across her chest. She looked younger than 25 in that moment. Young enough to be someone's daughter. Young enough to still believe truth should matter the first time it is spoken. "Show me," Ethan said. Maya pointed to the center monitor. Ethan leaned over Naomi's keyboard and read the deployment log. At first, he only scanned it. Then he stopped. His coffee cup lowered slowly to the desk. Critical race condition resolved. High-volume order failure prevented. Fix deployed successfully. N. Carter, 9:02 a.m. He scrolled up. The timestamps reached back through the night like footprints in snow. 11:58 p.m. diagnostics, 12:41 a.m. Latency analysis, 1:33 a.m. concurrency failure isolated, 3:22 a.m. handler rewrite, 5:56 a.m. simulated order test, 7:41 a.m. historical data back test, 8:49 a.m. high-volume stress test, 9:02 a.m. production deployment. Ethan's throat tightened. "How long was she here?" he asked. Maya opened the access dashboard. Badge entry at 11:49 p.m. She never left. Someone behind them whispered, "Lord." Ethan did not turn around. He opened the code comparison. The old version appeared on the left, Naomi's overnight version on the right. The difference was not a small patch. It was not a sleepy engineer pushing careless code into production. It was a deep rebuild of the engine's concurrency handler, the hidden heart that told the system which orders came first, which orders canceled, and which orders had to wait. Every line was careful. Every comment was precise. Every safeguard had a reason. Ethan had known Naomi was good. He had recommended her for promotion twice. He had told the executive committee she was one of the most reliable engineers in the building. But this was different. This was the kind of work that did not merely fix a system. It understood it. "Run the old version," Ethan said. Maya blinked. "With today's data?" "Yes." Daniel Cho pulled a chair beside them and opened the backup environment. Together, they loaded the prefix Apex engine into simulation. The old code, the version that would have been live at 9:30 that morning if Naomi had not left her son, driven through rain, and worked alone until her body gave out. Ethan stood behind the chair, one hand against the desk. "Start it." Daniel clicked run. For a few seconds, the simulation looked normal. Orders moved through the screen in green lines. Buy, sell, cancel, match, confirm. Then the market open volume hit. The green lines began to flicker. One sell order crossed wrong, then another, then a cluster. The dashboard flashed yellow, then red. Order mismatch detected. Stop-loss conflict. Execution priority failure. Duplicate position exposure. Cascading error. The simulated loss counter began to climb. 4 million, 17 million, 48 million, 92 million. Maya covered her mouth. 136 million, 189 million, 211 million. Ethan reached forward and stopped the simulation at $217 million. No one spoke. The number sat there on the screen, bright and merciless. $217 million. Not a theory. Not a complaint. Not an overreaction from a tired woman at a corner desk. A disaster that had been waiting for the opening bell. Ethan stepped back as if the floor had moved beneath him. Then he did something he should have done weeks earlier. He opened the email archive and searched Naomi Carter. 3 messages appeared. The first had been sent 6 weeks ago to her direct manager. Subject line, Apex high volume order risk, potential race condition, no response. The second had been sent 4 weeks ago to Ethan himself. He remembered it as soon as he saw it. He remembered opening it between 2 meetings, thinking Naomi was probably right, thinking he would put it on the next sprint review, thinking there would be time. There had not been time. His face tightened. The third email had been sent 2 weeks ago to Grant Whitmore's office. Subject line, urgent, Apex vulnerability. Financial exposure may exceed 200 million. Opened by executive assistant, no reply. Ethan stared at the subject line until the words blurred. Maya's voice was small. She told everyone. Yes, Ethan said. His voice came out rough. She did. He looked around the floor. The same people who had watched Naomi be escorted out now watched him with the frightened stillness of people who realized they had been present at the beginning of something that would not stay hidden. Ethan closed the email archive. Then he looked toward Grant Whitmore's office. Through the glass, Grant was smiling into a phone call, one hand in his pocket, posture relaxed. He had no idea that the company he believed he had disciplined had just been spared by the woman he had dismissed. Ethan picked up his laptop. Maya touched his sleeve. What are you going to do? He looked down at her hand, then at Naomi's empty chair. I'm going to tell him the truth. Maya's eyes filled. And if he doesn't listen? For a moment, Ethan said nothing. He thought of the email Naomi had sent him 4 weeks earlier. The one he had meant to answer. The warning that had sat quietly in his inbox while a single mother carried the weight alone. Then he looked at the red number still frozen on the simulation screen. He will listen, Ethan said. But even as he said it, he knew that men like Grant Whitmore rarely listened to truth when it arrived softly. So this time, Ethan would not arrive softly. He walked across the engineering floor with the deployment log, the simulation, the emails, and the shame of every missed warning burning in his hands. Behind him, Maya stayed beside Naomi's desk. She picked up the yellow sticky note Naomi had left near the keyboard, Eli medication refill. Maya pressed it gently against the monitor frame, where it would not be lost. At 9:51 a.m., Ethan Royce opened the glass door to Grant Whitmore's office without knocking. Grant looked up, irritated. Ethan, I'm on a call. Ethan closed the door behind him, ended. Grant Whitmore ended the call slowly. Not because Ethan Royce had frightened him at first. Grant was not the kind of man who frightened easily, especially not in his own office, behind a walnut desk, beneath framed business magazines where his face appeared beside words like vision and discipline. He ended the call because Ethan had not asked. He had ordered, and in Grant's world, people beneath him did not give orders. What is this? Grant asked. Ethan placed his laptop on the desk and turned it around. The answer you should have looked for before you fired Naomi Carter. Grant leaned back in his chair, his expression hardened into the practiced calm of a man preparing to dismiss a problem before it grew large enough to embarrass him. I dismissed an employee who slept on the engineering floor after making an unauthorized production change. You dismissed the only engineer who kept this company alive this morning. Grant's eyes narrowed. Careful. No, Ethan said. We are past careful. For a moment, only the city could be heard beyond the glass. 31 floors below. Manhattan moved in bright lines of traffic and noise, unaware that a company handling hundreds of millions of dollars had survived the morning by the width of one woman's exhaustion. Ethan opened the simulation results. This is today's market open data running through the version of Apex that existed before Naomi's fix. He pressed play. Green lines moved across the screen. Grant watched with impatience at first. Numbers meant little to him unless they appeared in a board report or investor deck. But then the lines began turning red. One after another, Alerts stacked across the display. Order mismatch, execution conflict, duplicate exposure, failed priority handling. The loss counter climbed. 22 million, 64 million, 109 million, 178 million, 217 million. Ethan stopped the playback. Grant's face changed, but not in the way Ethan hoped. There was no sorrow, no shock for Naomi, no immediate regret. Only calculation. Simulations can be made to look dramatic, Grant said. Ethan stared at him. Those are real orders from this morning. But the system did not fail, because Naomi rewrote the concurrency handler between midnight and 7 in the morning. She tested it, deployed it, and signed the log at 9:02. You fired her at 9:18. Grant stood and walked toward the window. She should have contacted management. She did. Ethan opened the email archive. 3 messages appeared on the screen, clean and undeniable. The first to Naomi's direct manager 6 weeks earlier. The second to Ethan 4 weeks earlier. The third to Grant's office 2 weeks earlier. Subject line, urgent, Apex vulnerability. Financial exposure may exceed 200 million. Grant's jaw tightened. My assistant screens technical noise. This was not noise. I receive hundreds of emails a day. This one had urgent and 200 million in the subject line. Grant turned from the window. Ethan, the system is running. The client is safe. Nothing happened. Ethan's voice dropped. Something did happen. We humiliated the person who saved the client in front of the whole floor. Grant gave a thin smile. There it is. This is emotional now. No. This is operational. The patch needs monitoring. Naomi planned follow-up adjustments after deployment. She never completed them because security escorted her out. Then assigned someone else. No one else understands the new handler well enough. That is your department. It is. And I am telling you the company needs Naomi Carter back today. Grant returned to his chair, placed both hands on the desk and leaned forward. Absolutely not. Ethan did not move. Grant's voice sharpened. You want me to call back a woman I fired less than an hour ago? After she made an emergency production deployment without informing me? Do you understand the message that sends? Yes, Ethan said. It sends the message that facts matter. No. It sends the message that leadership can be pressured by panic. Ethan closed his laptop halfway but kept one hand on it. Grant, listen carefully. If Sterling Ridge learns their 200 million was protected by a fired engineer, and if the board learns you ignored her warning, this becomes more than a staffing issue. Grant's eyes cooled. Are you threatening me? I am warning you. I am the CEO, and the board is above you. The words landed with enough force to change the air in the room. Grant looked at Ethan as if seeing an unfamiliar man. For years, Ethan had been useful because he was brilliant and cautious. He argued in meetings, but never beyond the point of comfort. He objected, then adjusted. He fixed the technical messes and left the public decisions to men like Grant. This morning, something had broken in him, or maybe something had finally awakened. Grant sat down. We keep this quiet, he said. You stabilize the patch. HR records Naomi is terminated for conduct. If anyone asks, she violated protocol. No mention of a near failure. No mention of Sterling Ridge exposure. No mention of my office receiving an email. Ethan slowly lifted his hand from the laptop. You want to hide this. I want to protect the company. You want to protect yourself. Grant's face flushed. Be careful, Ethan. Ethan picked up his laptop. You already said that. He walked to the door. Grant called after him, voice low and hard. If you take this outside my office, you will damage the IPO, the staff, the investors, and every person who works here. Ethan stopped with his hand on the handle. No, Grant, Naomi protected all of them. You damaged her. He opened the door and stepped back onto the engineering floor. Every head turned. Ethan did not speak to the room. He did not need to. His face told enough. At Naomi's desk, Maya Brooks still stood beside the empty chair. She had copied the deployment log, the access record, the simulation results, and the 3 emails into a secure incident file. Her hands were steadier now. What did he say? She asked. Ethan looked toward Grant's closed office door. He wants silence. Maya's face fell. Ethan looked at the monitoring wall. Apex continued to run clean. Green lights, stable latency. Hundreds of thousands of trades flowing through a system one tired mother had saved while everyone else slept. Then Ethan looked back at Maya. We are not giving it to him. By noon, the first crack appeared. Victoria Hale, managing director of Sterling Ridge Capital, called Harrington's client relations team. Her analysts had noticed something unusual. Apex had handled the heaviest trading surge in 2 years without delay. Better than promised. Better than any prior stress event. Victoria did not want a sales summary. She wanted the name of the engineer responsible. The request traveled from client relations to Grant's assistant, then to Grant's office. Grant read the message twice. Please connect Ms. Hale with the infrastructure lead responsible for this morning's apex stabilization. For the first time all day, Grant Whitmore understood that Naomi Carter's empty chair was not the end of the problem. It was the beginning. By 1 o'clock that afternoon, the engineering floor no longer sounded like a workplace. It sounded like a room holding its breath. The apex system was still running cleanly. Every dashboard showed green. Latency remained low. Sterling Ridge Capital's trades had cleared without a single major delay. To anyone outside Harrington Global Systems, it looked like a successful morning. Inside the 31st floor, everyone knew better. Success had a name, Naomi Carter, and Naomi was gone. Maya Brooks sat at her desk with both hands wrapped around a paper cup she had not drunk from. Her eyes kept drifting toward Naomi's empty chair. The photo of Eli was gone, but the shape of it remained on the monitor frame, a faint square where tape had once held a mother's reason for getting through the day. Daniel Cho rolled his chair closer to Maya. Did Ethan send the incident file? Maya nodded. To who? Arthur Bennett. Daniel's eyebrows lifted. The chairman of the board was not a man people contacted for small matters. Arthur Bennett was 66, soft-spoken, old school, and harder to move than stone. He had built his first company in a rented office above a hardware store in Ohio. He had the patience of a farmer and the memory of a judge. People said he could sit silently through a 3-hour meeting and still remember the one sentence everyone else wished he had missed. If Arthur sees it, Daniel said, Grant can't bury this. Maya looked toward the glass office. Grant will try. Daniel did not argue. Behind the glass, Grant Whitmore stood with his back to the floor, speaking into the phone. His posture was perfect, but his right hand kept opening and closing near his hip. It was the only sign that something had touched him beneath the surface. On the other end of the line, Victoria Hale was not raising her voice. She did not need to. Mr. Whitmore, she said, my analysts have reviewed this morning's performance. Apex handled a volume spike that should have pushed your platform into stress thresholds. Instead, it performed better than your last 3 quarterly benchmarks. Grant forced a smile into his voice. That is exactly the level of stability we promise our clients. I am not calling for a brochure line, Victoria said. Grant's smile vanished. Victoria Hale managed one of Sterling Ridge Capital's largest funds. She was known on Wall Street for 2 things. She did not waste words. And she did not forgive carelessness. If she was pleased, she expanded business. If she was concerned, contracts disappeared quietly and never returned. I want to speak with the engineer responsible, she said. Grant turned slightly away from the floor. Our infrastructure team works collaboratively. There is no single. There is always one person who knows where the real risk is hidden, Mr. Whitmore. Grant said nothing. Victoria continued, colder now. Your client relations director told my team there was a late-night stabilization deployment. My analysts can see the timing from the performance data. Something changed before market open. I want the name. Grant looked at the message from his assistant again. Infrastructure lead responsible for this morning's apex stabilization. His mouth dried. Naomi Carter, he said at last. There was a pause. Good, Victoria said. Have Ms. Carter call me by 3. Grant closed his eyes. That may not be possible. Why? Grant looked through the glass. Maya was staring back at him. Mrs. Carter is no longer with the company. The silence on the phone changed shape. When Victoria spoke again, every word was quiet enough to be dangerous. Did she resign after saving your platform? Grant's jaw tightened. There was a personnel matter. What kind of personnel matter? It would be inappropriate to discuss details. Mr. Whitmore, Victoria said, I have $200 million moving through your system. I am not asking because I enjoy gossip. I am asking because the person who appears to understand the platform best is suddenly unavailable. Grant tried to steady his tone. Sterling Ridge has nothing to worry about. Apex is stable. Systems are only as stable as the people responsible for them. Grant had no answer. Victoria let the silence sit long enough to make him feel it. Until I receive a clear explanation, Sterling Ridge is pausing all new allocations through Harrington. Grant gripped the edge of the desk. Victoria, that is unnecessary. What is unnecessary, she replied, is firing the person who prevented a loss large enough to reach my boardroom. The call ended. Grant stood frozen, phone still in hand. Outside his office, Ethan Royce returned from the elevator with a printed folder tucked under his arm. He had not waited for Grant's permission. He had gone directly to legal archives, pulled the emergency deployment policy, copied Naomi's warnings, and attached the simulation results Maya had preserved. He placed the folder on Maya's desk. Arthur Bennett's office confirmed receipt, Ethan said. Maya exhaled. What did they say? Emergency board session tomorrow morning, 8 sharp. A murmur moved across the floor. Daniel Cho leaned back, eyes wide. Tomorrow? Ethan nodded. Arthur also asked for the raw logs, not summaries, deployment records, access history, email trail, simulation output, everything. Maya looked at the folder, and Naomi? Ethan's face softened. I called her. Maya's breath caught. What did she say? Ethan looked away. At that same hour, Naomi Carter was sitting at her kitchen table in Brooklyn, with Eli asleep on the sofa under the blue blanket from Georgia. The apartment was small but clean. A stack of medical bills sat near a chipped mug. Her work badge lay beside them, useless now, its plastic face turned down as if ashamed. When Ethan's call came, she almost ignored it. But she answered. Naomi, Ethan said, his voice rough. I need to tell you something. She listened without speaking as he explained the logs. The simulation, the old code failing at market open, the projected losses climbing past 200 million. He told her Maya had found the evidence. He told her Arthur Bennett had the file. He told her Sterling Ridge was asking for her by name. Naomi sat still. Eli stirred on the sofa, then settled again. At last she said, Did Grant look at the screen? Ethan closed his eyes. No. That answer hurt more than the firing. Naomi looked at the bills on the table, then at her sleeping child. I asked him to, she said. I know. No, Naomi said softly. You don't know. I begged him with every bit of dignity I had left. Ethan had no defense. I am sorry, he said. Naomi's hand rested on Eli's small sweater folded beside her. I did not need him to praise me. I needed him to ask one question before deciding who I was. Her voice did not break. That made it worse. Ethan stood alone in a side hallway, holding the phone like it weighed more than any machine he had ever built. There is a board meeting tomorrow, he said. Arthur Bennett may want to speak with you. Naomi looked at the photograph of her mother on the kitchen wall, a woman in hospital scrubs with tired feet and proud eyes. I have spent my whole life proving I belong in rooms where people still act surprised. See me, Naomi said. I am tired, Ethan. I understand. No, she said gently, but maybe now you are beginning to. After the call ended, Naomi sat in the quiet apartment and watched Eli sleep. Her son turned slightly, opened his eyes and whispered, Mommy, did the computers need you? Naomi brushed a curl from his forehead. Yes, baby. Did you help them? She smiled, but her eyes filled. I did. Eli closed his eyes again. Then they should say thank you. Naomi looked toward the window, where afternoon light touched the edge of the table. Somewhere across the river, powerful people were finally reading what she had written weeks ago. But in that small kitchen, beside her sleeping child, Naomi Carter already knew something they had not yet understood. An apology could repair a record. It could not erase the moment a person was made invisible in front of everyone. Arthur Bennett arrived at Harrington Global Systems at 7:12 the next morning. He came without an entourage, no assistant walking half a step behind him, no public relations director carrying prepared statements, no polished announcement for the staff. Just an old leather briefcase in one hand and a dark wool jacket folded over his arm. The lobby guard stood straighter when he saw him. Good morning, Mr. Bennett. Arthur paused at the front desk. Morning, Lewis. The guard looked surprised that the chairman remembered his name. Arthur always did. His father had run a repair shop in Dayton, Ohio, and had taught him early that a company was not built by the people with their names on the doors. It was built by the ones who arrived before daylight, stayed after closing, and kept things from falling apart without asking for applause. Arthur glanced toward the elevators. Were you here yesterday morning? Lewis's face changed. Yes, sir. Did you see Miss Carter leave? Lewis lowered his eyes. I did. Arthur waited. The guard's voice grew quieter. She looked like she had carried the whole night on her back. Arthur nodded once. That is what I thought. He took the elevator to the top floor. At 7:40, the boardroom was already half full. 10 leather chairs surrounded a long walnut table. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan shone in the soft morning light, clean and golden from a distance. Up close, Arthur knew, every city was built out of tired hands. Grant Whitmore sat near the head of the table with a laptop open before him. His suit was perfect. His cufflinks caught the light. A 12-slide presentation waited on the screen titled Emergency Personnel and Production Control Review. Arthur saw it and said nothing. Ethan Royce arrived at 7:53, carrying no slides. Only a folder, a laptop, and a face that looked older than it had the day before. Maya Brooks followed him, nervous but steady. She had been asked to attend as the employee who first preserved the deployment evidence. Grant looked at her and frowned. Why is she here? Arthur answered before Ethan could. Because she noticed what you did not. Grant's mouth closed. At exactly 8, Arthur took his seat. Let us begin. Grant stood quickly, as if speed itself could give him control of the room. Yesterday morning, he began, I encountered a serious breach of workplace discipline and production protocol. An employee, Naomi Carter, was found asleep on the engineering floor after deploying code to a live trading platform without executive approval. He clicked to the first slide. A clean chart appeared. Process risk, compliance breach, IPO exposure. Grant's voice was smooth, practiced, almost sorrowful. As CEO, I have a responsibility to protect this company. Harrington is preparing for a public offering. Our investors, clients, and employees depend on strong governance. I made a difficult decision in the interest of standards. Several board members looked down at the files Arthur had placed before them. Grant continued, "This should not become a referendum on one employee. This is about policy. If we allow engineers, no matter how capable, to bypass command structure because they believe they know better, we invite chaos." He paused, letting the words settle. Chaos. Arthur folded his hands. "Are you finished?" Grant blinked. "I have 11 more slides." "That will not be necessary." The room went still. Arthur turned to Ethan. "Mr. Royce." Ethan stood. He connected his laptop to the large boardroom screen. For a moment, Naomi Carter's deployment log filled the wall. No design, no graphics, no executive language, only evidence. "This is the production record from yesterday morning," Ethan said. Naomi Carter deployed a fix at 9:02 a.m. The change addressed a race condition inside the Apex order matching engine. Had it remained active under yesterday's market volume, sell orders could have been processed incorrectly across multiple client positions. Grant shifted. Ethan did not look at him. "This is the badge record. Ms. Carter entered the building at 11:49 p.m. the night before. Terminal activity continued until 9:02 a.m. No other infrastructure engineer worked in that system during that period." Maya sat with her hands clasped in her lap. Ethan opened the simulation. "This is yesterday's actual market data running through the version of Apex that existed before Ms. Carter's fix." He pressed play. For the first few seconds, everything looked normal. Then the red alerts began. Order mismatch, duplicate exposure, priority failure, forced position conflict tests. The simulated loss counter climbed across the bottom of the screen. 31 million, 86 million, 143 million, 217 million. A board member whispered, "My God." Ethan stopped the simulation. "That loss exposure includes Sterling Ridge Capital and 3 secondary clients. It does not include litigation, regulatory review, reputational damage, or IPO delay." Arthur looked at Grant. Grant stared at the screen. Ethan moved to the next file. "Carter warned management 3 times over 6 weeks. The first warning went to her direct manager. The second came to me. I failed to act quickly enough. That responsibility is mine." No one interrupted him. "The third was sent to Mr. Whitmore's office 2 weeks ago." On the screen appeared the subject line. "Urgent Apex vulnerability. Financial exposure may exceed 200 million. Opened, no response." Arthur read the line aloud slowly. "Urgent. Financial exposure may exceed 200 million. Then he looked at Grant. "Did you read this email?" Grant adjusted his cufflink. "My office receives hundreds of technical messages. My assistant filters them. That was not my question." Grant's face tightened. "No, I did not personally read it." Arthur nodded. "Did you look at Ms. Carter's screen before ordering security to remove her?" Grant did not answer. Arthur waited. "No," Grant said. "Did you ask why she was asleep?" Silence. "Did you review the deployment log?" "No." "Did you consult the CTO before terminating the engineer who had just altered the company's core trading system?" Grant's voice dropped. "No." Arthur leaned back. "Then you did not make a leadership decision. You made an assumption." The words sat in the boardroom like a stone laid on glass. Grant tried to recover. "With respect, Arthur, the deployment was still unauthorized." Arthur opened the printed policy in front of him. Section 4.7. Emergency sole engineer deployment override is permitted when estimated financial exposure exceeds $100 million and no engineering quorum is reachable inside the active threat window. He looked up. She was alone. It was midnight. The exposure exceeded 200 million. She followed company policy. Grant's face lost color. Arthur turned to the screen at the far wall. A video call connected. Victoria Hale appeared, seated in her office at Sterling Ridge Capital. Her expression was calm, but there was no softness in it. "I will be brief," she said. "My firm had $200 million in active exposure through your platform yesterday morning. Your system performed flawlessly because of Carter's overnight work. If that engineer had not acted, Sterling Ridge would be having a very different conversation with your legal department. Today, she leaned slightly toward the camera. I do not invest with companies that punish competence and protect arrogance. Grant looked down. Victoria continued. Sterling Ridge is pausing all new allocations through Harrington pending leadership review. My concern is not the system. My concern is judgment. The screen went dark. For several seconds, no one spoke. Arthur closed the folder in front of him. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to respond? Grant opened his mouth, but whatever words he had prepared no longer seemed to belong in the room. Arthur turned to the board. I move for an immediate vote to remove Grant Whitmore as CEO of Harrington Global Systems, effective today, pending all required formal procedures. Grounds: failure of judgment, failure to investigate and conduct harmful to the company's employees, clients, and shareholders. Grant stood. Arthur, you cannot be serious. I am very serious. One by one, every hand at the table rose. 10 votes, unanimous. Grant remained standing, his 12 slides still waiting on the laptop no one had asked to see. Arthur's voice was calm. Mr. Whitmore, you are relieved of your duties. Outside the boardroom, the city continued moving. Inside, a man who had mistaken cruelty for strength finally learned that a corner office could not protect him from the truth. And somewhere in Brooklyn, Naomi Carter was making toast for her son, unaware that the door she had been pushed through was about to open again. Naomi Carter did not answer the first call. She was standing at the sink in her Brooklyn apartment, washing Eli's cereal bowl with one hand while holding the phone between her shoulder and ear for the pharmacy. The kitchen window was open a few inches. Warm city air slipped in with the sound of buses, distant sirens, and someone laughing on the sidewalk below. Her apartment was small, but it had survived many hard mornings. A blue blanket from Georgia lay folded on the sofa. Eli's school backpack leaned against a chair. On the refrigerator, a spelling test with a gold star hung beside a hospital appointment card and a handwritten note from Naomi's mother. Stand tall, baby. Even when your feet hurt. The phone on the table began to ring again. Unknown number. Naomi looked at it, then looked at Eli. He was sitting at the table, drawing a picture of a tall building with many windows. At the very top, he had drawn a tiny woman with curly hair holding a computer like a shield. Mommy, he said without looking up, your phone is dancing. Naomi dried her hands on a towel. I see that. You gonna answer, she hesitated. The morning had already given her too much. First, the silence after being fired, then Ethan's call, then the heavy knowledge that the system had almost failed exactly as she warned. For years, Naomi had trained herself to keep moving after hurt, make breakfast, pay bills, refill medicine, answer emails, smile at Eli. Do not fall apart where the child can see, but her body knew the truth. She was tired down to the bone. The phone rang a third time. Naomi picked it up. Hello, a man's voice answered, older, steady, and careful. Miss Carter, this is Arthur Bennett, chairman of the board at Harrington Global Systems. Naomi stood very still. Across the table, Eli stopped drawing and looked up. Arthur continued. I know you have no reason to take my call. I am grateful that you did. Naomi's hand tightened around the phone. If this is about legal paperwork, you can send it by email. It is not. A pause. Then Arthur said, I am calling to apologize. Naomi closed her eyes. Some words arrived too late to stop the pain, but still early enough to open a wound. Arthur did not rush. What happened to you yesterday was wrong. The board has reviewed the deployment records, access logs, simulation results, and emails you sent over the past 6 weeks. You warned the company. You followed emergency policy. You protected our clients, our employees, and the future of the firm. Naomi looked toward the stack of medical bills near the toaster. Her voice remained quiet. I tried to tell him. I know. No, Naomi said. I stood there in front of everyone and asked him to look at my screen, just once. That was all. Arthur's voice softened. He should have. Eli slid down from his chair and came closer. Naomi placed one hand gently on his shoulder. What happens now? She asked. Grant Whitmore has been removed as CEO effective immediately pending final corporate filings. Naomi opened her eyes. For a moment, even the street noise seemed to fade. Arthur continued. The board voted unanimously this morning. His direct handling of your termination, his failure to investigate, and his failure to act on your warning were unacceptable. Naomi did not speak. She thought she would feel relief. Instead, she felt a great stillness, like standing in a house after a storm and seeing the roof was still there, but knowing the rain had already come through. Arthur said, We are also correcting the human resources record. Your termination will be fully reversed. You will receive back pay, a written apology, And a formal public record that you acted within company policy. Naomi let out a slow breath. That fixes the file. Yes, Arthur said. It does not fix what happened to you. The honesty surprised her. Eli whispered, Mommy, who is it? Naomi covered the phone for a second. It's someone from work, baby. The computers, despite everything, Naomi almost smiled. Close. Arthur waited. When Naomi returned the phone to her ear, he said, There is one more matter. The board would like to offer you a new position. Vice President of Platform Integrity. You would report directly to the board with authority over emergency response, vulnerability review, and infrastructure risk. You would build the team. You would set the escalation rules. No critical warning would disappear into an inbox again. Naomi leaned against the counter. The title sounded large. Too large for her small kitchen with peeling paint near the window and a child's. Medicine bottle beside the salt shaker. But she knew the work. She had been doing the work long before anyone gave it a title. Why? She asked. Because you understand the system. That is not enough reason to give someone power. No, Arthur said. But you also understand what happens when people without power are ignored. Naomi looked at Eli. He had gone back to the table and was adding a sun above the building in his drawing. The little woman at the top now had a cape. Mr. Bennett, Naomi said, I did not save Harrington because I loved the company. I did it because people trusted that system with money they could not afford to. Lose retirement funds, college savings, pensions. A number on your boardroom screen is somebody's life somewhere else. I agree. I am not interested in returning so everyone can feel better about what happened. I understand. If I come back with real authority. Maya Brooks is promoted. Emergency reports get a 24-hour response. Any exposure over 50 million goes to the CTO and the board at the same time. And no employee gets publicly removed without investigation unless there is an immediate safety concern. Arthur was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Put it in writing. I expect to approve it. Naomi's eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. I need the weekend. Take it. After the call ended, Naomi stood in the kitchen with the phone still in her hand. Eli came to her and hugged her waist. Mommy, he asked. Are you going back to the tall building? Naomi knelt in front of him. I don't know yet. Did they say sorry? She looked at his small face, at the innocence that still believed apologies were simple things like bandages pressed over scrapes. Yes, she said, they did. Eli thought about that. Did they say thank you? Naomi pulled him close. Yes, baby. He rested his head on her shoulder. Then maybe the computers learned manners. Naomi laughed softly, and this time the sound did not break. Later that afternoon, she called her mother in Georgia. Lillian Carter answered on the second ring, out of breath from walking across the hospital break room. She was 64, with knees that ached before rain and a voice that still carried Sunday morning warmth. Baby, you all right? Naomi told her everything. The firing, the evidence, the board meeting, Grant's removal, the offer. Lillian listened without interrupting. When Naomi finished, there was a long silence. Then her mother said, You do not owe them your peace, I know. But if you go back, Lillian continued, do not go back as the woman they escorted out. Go back as the woman they should have seen the first time. Naomi looked through the window at the city. For the first time in 2 days, she stood a little straighter. Monday morning at 8 sharp, Naomi Carter stepped into the lobby of Harrington Global Systems. Not through the side entrance, not with her eyes lowered, through the front doors. She wore the same simple navy blazer she had worn many times before. Her natural curls were pulled back neatly. Eli's photo was in her bag. Her badge had been reactivated. Maya Brooks was waiting near the elevator, holding 2 coffees. When she saw Naomi, her eyes filled. I should have said something, Maya whispered. Naomi took the coffee gently. Yes, she said, you should have. Maya looked down. Then Naomi added, but you did something when it mattered next. Maya wiped her cheek. The elevator doors opened. Together they rode to the 31st floor. When Naomi stepped onto the engineering floor, the room fell silent again. But this silence was different. This time people stood, one by one, not clapping loudly, not making a scene, just standing. Daniel Cho lowered his head in respect. Ethan Royce stood near Naomi's old desk. Eyes full of apology, he still had not earned the right to fully speak. Arthur Bennett waited beside the conference room door. Naomi walked to her corner desk. The monitor was dark now. The sticky note about Eli's medication was still there, carefully placed where Maya had saved it. Naomi touched it with 2 fingers, then she turned to the room. I am not here for revenge, she said. I am here because systems fail when warnings are ignored. People fail too. No one moved, so we are going to build something better. Outside the windows, the morning light spread across Manhattan, and for the first time, Naomi Carter's desk was no longer in the corner. 6 months later, the 31st floor of Harrington Global Systems no longer looked the same. The old corner desk was gone. So were the rows of silent cubicles where engineers once worked with their backs bent and their eyes lowered, afraid to raise concerns that might disturb someone above them. In their place stood open debugging stations, shared monitoring screens, quiet rooms for overnight emergency work, and a clear escalation board that every employee could see. Naomi Carter had insisted on that. No hidden reports, no buried warnings, no critical message sitting unread in someone's inbox while a tired engineer carried the weight alone. On the wall near the coffee station hung a simple metal plaque. It did not carry a slogan chosen by a marketing team. It carried the words someone had posted anonymously on the company message board the day Naomi was escorted out. She worked all night to save the system. Her reward was a security escort, never again. Naomi had not asked for the plaque. In truth, when Arthur Bennett first showed it to her, she stood in silence for a long time. Part of her wanted it taken down, not because it was untrue, but because truth, once shaped into metal, could feel heavier than memory. Then Maya Brooks touched the edge of the plaque and said, "Someone new will read this one day and know they are allowed to speak," so Naomi let it stay. By then, Maya was no longer a junior engineer hiding behind her monitor. She had been promoted to systems engineer and led the new overnight monitoring team. She still carried the guilt of that morning, but she no longer let guilt make her small. Ethan Royce remained CTO, but he was different too. He spoke less in meetings and listened more. When young engineers sent warnings, he answered them himself. He never again used the phrase, "next sprint," for a risk that needed attention today. As for Grant Whitmore, his name appeared briefly in financial articles after his removal. Then the articles moved on, as they always do. Men like Grant often believed they were permanent because their names appeared on glass doors, but glass doors could be changed in an afternoon. Naomi rarely spoke of him. When reporters called, she declined interviews. When podcasts invited her to tell the story, she said no. When business magazines asked for a photo beside the Apex monitoring wall, she sent the request to communications and returned to work. She did not want to become a symbol more than a person. She was still a mother who checked homework at night, still a daughter who called Georgia every Sunday, still a woman who kept Eli's medication list folded in the pocket of her bag, not because she needed to, but because habit is what worry becomes after years of practice. The raise helped, the new title helped, the corrected record helped, but healing did not arrive all at once. It came in smaller ways. It came the first time Naomi left work before sunset and did not feel guilty. It came when Eli's doctor smiled and said his numbers looked steady. It came when Lillian Carter visited from Georgia and stood in Naomi's new office, looking out at Manhattan through the window. Her mother wore her best church dress and the same sensible shoes she had worn through decades of hospital corridors. For several minutes, she said nothing. She only rested one hand on the window ledge and looked at the city below. Then she turned to Naomi. "Baby," she said, "your grandmother cleaned houses with no windows. Your mama cleaned hospital rooms with no windows. Now look where you are." Naomi tried to smile, but her eyes filled too quickly. Lillian stepped closer and straightened the collar of her daughter's blazer, though it did not need straightening. "Do not let this office make you forget the women who got you here." "I won't," Naomi whispered. "I know." That afternoon, Naomi brought Eli to the 31st floor for the first time. He walked in holding her hand, wide-eyed, carrying the same stuffed bear with one missing button eye. The engineers greeted him as if he were a small visiting dignitary. Daniel Cho gave him a Harrington notebook. Maya gave him a sticker shaped like a rocket. Ethan bent down and asked if he liked computers. Eli looked at him seriously. "Only if they let my mommy sleep." The room went quiet for half a second. Then Naomi laughed, and because she laughed, everyone else did too. Later, Eli stood beneath the plaque near the coffee station and sounded out the words slowly. "She worked all night." He looked up at Naomi. "That was you?" Naomi knelt beside him. "Yes. Were you scared?" She thought about the rain. The hospital, the empty office, Grant's voice, the elevator ride down, the long silence after being made invisible in front of everyone. "Yes," she said, "I was. But you did it anyway?" Naomi brushed a curl from his forehead. "That is what courage is, baby. Not being unafraid. Doing what is right while your hands are shaking." Eli nodded as if storing the sentence somewhere important. On the day Harrington finally went public, 8 months after the morning that nearly ended it, Naomi stood in the back of the room while executives rang the opening bell. Arthur Bennett asked her to stand in front. She refused gently. "I have spent enough of my life proving I deserve to be seen," she told him. "Now I want to make sure the next person does not have to prove it so hard." Arthur understood. The company's public filing included a new section called Engineering First Culture. Naomi helped write it. Her name appeared on the first page, not hidden in a team list, not buried in a footnote. Naomi Carter, Vice President of Platform Integrity. That night, she went home before Eli's bedtime. They ate soup at the Smalls kitchen table in Brooklyn, the same table where she had once sat with medical bills, a cold cup of tea, and a future that seemed to be closing around her. Eli showed her a new drawing. This time, the tall building had many windows. At the top stood a woman with curly hair. Around her were other people, all holding lights. "What is this?" Naomi asked. Eli smiled. "That is you teaching everybody how to see in the dark." Naomi looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then she placed it on the refrigerator, beside the hospital appointment card and her mother's note. "Stand tall, baby, even when your feet hurt." Years later, people at Harrington would still tell the story of the night Naomi Carter saved the Apex system. They would talk about the $200 million. They would talk about the CEO who lost his office because he could not ask one simple question. They would talk about the engineer who worked until her body gave out and still left evidence behind strong enough to shake a boardroom. But Naomi knew the story was never truly about money. Money was only the number that made powerful people pay attention. The real story was about every quiet person who holds a place together without applause. Every mother who works after midnight because morning still needs breakfast. Every employee who sends the warning no one answers. Every tired soul who is mistaken for weak because they are gentle. Grant Whitmore looked at Naomi and saw a woman sleeping at her desk. He never saw the storm she had walked through. He never saw the child waiting at home. He never saw the mind that understood the system better than anyone in the building. He never saw her, and that was his failure, not hers. Because real worth does not disappear simply because arrogant people refuse to recognize it. It waits, it keeps records, it leaves timestamps, it leaves footprints in the dark, and when the truth finally rises, it does not need to shout, it only needs to be seen.